Da 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 dun dun dun. Missed it. Dun 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 dun. Hey everyone, what's going on? It's Andrew or SkullHQ here, and today we're taking a look at the SH Monsterarts Godzilla King of the Monsters, or Godzilla 2019 figure. This figure is about $90 retail. I think it's actually supposed to be like $70. Realistically, you're going to get it for about $90 or more at this point. Honestly, these guys skyrocket very, very quickly. That being said, it's quite the interesting figure. I feel multiple ways about it. So let's get into it. First off, taking a quick look at the sculpt here, it is beautiful. Zooming in on the arm here, you can see all the little individual scales. Same thing for the top of his head. Right there, you can see all the individualness of everything. You can see, as we throw some B-roll up maybe, of the mouth and eyes. They look very, very good. Traveling down, we have the dorsal plates, which of course are sculpted amazingly. These are based off the actual 3D render from the movie, along with additional sculpting by Yuji Sakai, as far as I know. And then we have the beautiful tail, but there are some problems with that we'll talk about in a minute, and a fairly rounded tip. Now, these dorsal plates are sculpted very well. They're sharp. They're quite sharp. They will stab you if you grab it. If you grab it, they will stab you. Then we can travel down the leg here. Of course, it is very, very awesome. And then we have the toenails, which look very, very nice. And then going up the very center of the body here, it does look very, very nice. Fairly good wash going over it. This brown paint app, and very detailed look. There's some Godzilla junk for you. Like I said, for the torso, the paint is pretty good on this guy, but it is a little inconsistent. Now, it's hard to show you on here. I'll throw up a photo from my phone. You'll see there's just sometimes it's brownish, sometimes it's blackish, and you really can't tell to the naked eye, but the end here, the tip of this tail, is not the same as the rest of the tail. It's slightly darker. So I don't know if some pieces just miss the wash or however they paint this stuff on there. But just there's some slight discoloration between bits. And I don't hate it. I don't really have a problem with it because you don't really notice it in most light. But if you're under high light circumstances, well, it brings out the highlights. And for some reason, sometimes it's browner, sometimes it's blacker. It's just the way it is. And oh boy, here comes my least favorite part of this figure, articulation. Now, I love SH Monsterarts figures for their articulation. That is something that NECA really struggles with. They have great paint, they have great sculpt, but NECA struggles with articulation. Particularly, in my opinion, in Godzilla's legs. They tend to always make Godzilla look like he's sitting. If we take a look here, he just kind of always looks like he's sitting. This is as straight up as I can make this Godzilla stand. You know, they're working on their tails. Their tails have gotten a lot better. They're using individual ball joints. They look good, right? Like, this looks good. NECA's doing a good job with that. SH Monsterarts needs to take some pointers from NECA for once on the tail. So the tail has some very interesting problems that, well, I just wouldn't expect from a figure for this much money. That being said, they are getting better over time. And if you're better with figures than I am, you'll know to heat treat these. But they are ungodly stiff. They click sometimes, which is generally, you know, not something you want your ball joints to be doing. And then this bit down here, kind of loose. I don't like that. These joints are very stiff, then it gets very loose here for a bit, and then a couple of these are pretty stiff themselves. They also have some serious trouble doing rotations. They click and snap and crackle and pop. All things I am very scared of. We also have some, you know, gappage, which is something that just happens with figures. But this one can be pretty bad if you're not paying attention, because they did something a little bit different with the tail on this one. Not every individual one of these is a ball joint. Sometimes, particularly in this area, there's loose bits in between two ball joints, right there and right there. And it's to hide the inside of the figure. I don't know why they do that, because it just ends up kind of making it more difficult. You know, but it is the way it is. They're trying to give it more range of motion, so when you do take photographs of it, you're really going to have to be careful with gappage there, because they can have some serious issues. That being said, you can generally just push it back together. The legs are generally pretty good in terms of articulation. They can do a full 360 degrees, which is very nice. They do have a 90-degree bend, well, more like 80-degree bend in the knee. Then we have a mid-calf, mid-shin rotation ball joint there. I mean, you can't really rotate that much. You can, but not very much. Then you have your ankle there, which does, of course, have ankle pivot for all you people who want to get Godzilla in a wide stance. Moving up here to the mid-torso, we do have a little bit of a crunch, not very much, unfortunately, and some very mediocre leaning. My first figure of these, because I'll tell you a story about that in a minute, had better lean. This one, not so much. And then we have a upper torso bend, which does very little, depending on where the arm is, and that's a problem we'll get to in a second. Then we have another kind of neck joint there at the base, another one here, and another one here. And this is one of those pieces that are just individual, that aren't actually on a ball joint. It's just kind of floating there. Then, of course, at the very top, we have our jaw joint. And supposedly the tongue is on a joint, but I don't really want to break it, so I'm not going to test it. And backtracking just a little bit, we do have the arms. So, they can do a full 360 sometimes. 90-degree bend, it is double jointed here and here. So you do get actually a great rotation, because these are covered joints, which I like a lot. It does make the joints disappear. I enjoy that. Then we do have a tilt swivel going here on the hands, which are very, very nicely painted. Okay, so like I said, I got a problem with the arms. The arms. So see how this kind of can go in and out just a little bit even. This one, not really. So the sculpt here, this is my problem with the sculpt. Maybe it's with the joints. You're going to have to heat this up and just kind of make room for this arm, because it's really not budging at all, going in and out. It's a real shame, because it makes putting this Godzilla in some different positions very, very difficult, because it is interfering with so many parts of the sculpt. This is one of my main complaints, for sure. See this joint here? You're supposed to be able to go like this. Yeah, right. So depending on where this arm is, you just can't do it anymore. It becomes significantly harder to move this chest joint. And that is very, very annoying if you're trying to do anything cool, like making him look down. Sometimes the arm is just in a bad position and there's nothing you can do. Also, it makes it difficult for him to look all the way up, because sometimes this will get in the way and you can't fully put this joint back. Now, I also think that there are some design flaws here with how the dorsal plates fit together. They are improvements over some older figures, but there's still some things they could do to change the way these dorsal plates are laid out. Overall, my tail has gotten looser down here, but looser in here, which is very, very good. So I have gotten a much better range of motion going side to side. I just have to be very, very careful, as I do not want to break it. But, you know, you can get quite the curve going on Godzilla's tail. The legs do need work. There is some problems with, you know, this whole thing, because the insides of the thighs rub up against each other inside the sculpt down here. And, you can't really do, like, both legs in at the same time. You can do one leg in and one leg out, but you're not going to get both legs in at the same time. So Godzilla's kind of always a little spread eagle. It's not too bad, but it's a little bit more than I would hope. There's also quite a bit of gappage down here. I'm sure with a little bit of heat, I can make that gap disappear. That's not too big of a deal. So this Godzilla does actually have some accessories, and they are fairly nice. And I say fairly because, unfortunately, slight problem with it. We have two accessories. One effect part, which is a reuse from the Spitfire Godzilla with some metallic paint across the top. And then we have an extra jaw. So, if we wrench off this jaw here, inside the head, there's that little spot for a ball joint, and you can take the ball joint from your other jaw and place it in, and it is a little bit difficult. It does give me some trouble. Eventually, you do get it snapped in all the way, and then Godzilla's biting some liquid hot fire. Oh dear, this is always a pain getting the head back on. If you do take it off, you don't have to, but it does make it a little bit easier. There we go. So now we have this effect part. Let's slot it in. And you can see it just kind of drags Godzilla's head down and falls out. Because there's no stand for this. Oh, there is a hole. There is a hole if you do want to put in a previously owned stand in for this effect part. But otherwise, getting a straight on fire blast, it's going to be difficult. He's going to be looking down a lot. It's going to pull his entire head down. But that being said, this is meant to recreate the poster, as you can see in my B-roll here. It can do it. It can get very, very close to being straight up, but it's still not quite straight up, and I think it's a little bit of a cop-out. You do actually have to use this bit of neck right here to kind of prop it up to kind of get the exact look you need to get him to stand straight up, because like I said, he's a little hunched. It's a little hard to get him to hunch over more, a little hard to get him to stand up straight. That's my main issue with this Godzilla, is the articulation, but he looks gorgeous. Let's see what this Godzilla figure looks like compared to other Godzilla figures you may be familiar with. Of course, right here we have the SH Monsterarts Godzilla 2019 next to NECA's Godzilla 2019. He is definitely a tad bit taller. These are 6-inch figures, by the way, both of them. It's a tad bit taller, his legs are a bit more out, he's more accurate in terms of color and head size. But you know what? Articulation is left to be desired on both of these figures. We have another Godzilla 2019 figure. This is the Jakks Pacific 3.5-inch Godzilla right there. Yeah, not really articulation happening at all on this guy. And then we have our Jakks Pacific Mothra. This is the only other Godzilla 2019 figure I have. Honestly, I don't know the exact scale on Mothra for the movie. I think it's more actually in scale with a 6-inch figure. So you know what? Hey, not too shabby. Overall, I really do want to like this figure, and I do like the figure. I think it's great, but I got the bad batch. I got a bad figure, and here's how I know. I had one of these before. I broke it. That was my bad. I didn't properly know how to heat the figure. The tails were giving me trouble, and I broke it. That figure, I was able to fix the shoulder on. I did not have any trouble with hunching. I didn't have any trouble with bending. I didn't have any trouble with the legs. My second figure, my second time around, I think just got a bad one. It's not bad, but it's not great. So I think you're really taking a 50-50 chance on whether or not you're going to get a good figure if you do buy this. It looks great. It'll look great on a shelf. You can get some good poses out of it, but be careful with the joints, and you might want to assess yours when you get it. You may get a bad one. I really do like the figure. I really do recommend it. The link to this on Amazon is going to be in the description below. So if you do want to check it out, feel free. It'll be there for you. Feel free to subscribe. I make reviews like this and vlogs. So like the video if you liked it. Favorite the video if it's your favorite. Don't forget to subscribe for more. And of course, I'll see you all later. Take care.